Thanks for staying with us. I promised you this conversation a short time ago about the mental toll that many of South Africa's university students have taken as a result of the pandemic and various other factors. You know, there's been a major adjustment, many of them now having to study from home because of the split to avoid large gatherings. Now the vaccination campaign in the country is gathering pace, and earlier we were speaking to the South African Union of Students, which said that load shedding, for example, is adding to the pressure and the stresses at this time of year because some students have had situations where, as they're trying to complete an online assessment, the power goes out. But the mental health challenges are far deeper than just power outages for many of the young people who are currently at tertiary institutions in the country. And we can speak about this with the Chief Executive of Higher Health, Professor Ahluwalia. Prof, a very good evening to you. Always great to speak to you. Welcome to Newsroom Africa. So you have run a study that found above 60% of those who participated were not doing well, especially during the pandemic.
Thank you. Good evening, Tembi, and good evening to everyone. You're absolutely right, Tembi. Mental health has always remained probably one of the biggest epidemics in the post-school education. The exam stress, and it has been through decades that we have known, and suicide always remained the second biggest cause of death in the higher education or among young people. But just when COVID-19 actually made an impact into South Africa in the last 2 years, and we did a survey just to see how deep the problems are, and not only just looking at mental health, but the entire spectrum of young people. And what came out is quite what we knew, but the numbers are shocking to see. As far as 65% of our young people and are in mild to moderate to severe psychosocial distress. And it's clear, you know, the situation they are in, this bereavement in the families. Some of the parents or guardians are losing job. They have to find study time at home. They're lockdowns, can't engage with each other. You're right, ESCOM issues are quite serious at this moment, and specifically now when the exams are happening and assessments are being delivered. And this whole hybrid thing of not being used. Remember, our institutions, except for UNISA, were built for contact learning. And contact learning has a reason of learning skills through proper engagement and through proper transition of skills being delivered from experience to the new graduates that are graduating from our institutions. And then comes the whole online system and trying to figure out the way of learning and still being a competent skill graduate. And this is tough, and it has taken a toll on the student community and on the young people, not in South Africa, but in the entire globe. And I think this is a huge worry for us. And that's why the interventions in mental health become predominantly a huge factor for us to invest in now.
Mm-hmm. And so, as troubling as the statistics that you've released are, the reality is that speaks to the young people who participated in the study, and the situation could be much worse.
Absolutely, Tembi. I mean, we actually know that the situation is dire. And this is no brainer. You know, we all come from our own families. If we are listening to this interview, we'll try to introspect among ourselves. We have family members we've lost. There's been huge bereavements into families. I'm repeating those points. There is a financial challenge. Some of our own parents and guardians are losing jobs. This is difficult times. And mental health always remained there. It was not like academic stress or mental health was never there. South Africa is actually, we are not a fortunate country. We're just 27 years old. We've inherited a difficult past. Most of our generation that's studying now is from broken families, a single mother raised. We haven't seen a transformative society where we have parents and parents have children, everybody looking after each other. Majority of our population is still very disadvantaged. Mm-hmm. And when they come into institutions of higher learning, where there's a huge peer-to-peer influence, there's drugs and alcohol, there's a different scenario. These things do exaggerate. And this is the time to build a new economic scale from a new population that's going to study from our post-school system, get jobs, and we need to build this culture of families, the next generation raised by parents, seeing less abuse, and maybe the stability of our minds will go further. However, the pressure of higher education will always remain. The competition, the fear of the unknown will remain. But it's very important for us to now put absolute measures where we can overcome this.
And you know, Prof, I referenced my conversation with the Union of Students earlier, who was saying that load shedding has been such a major cause of stress during the last 2 weeks or so for university students. They're saying, in fact, the best thing to do is to have full attendance back on campus. And when one is already dealing with fragile mental health or various mental health challenges, something that to some people may seem a minor inconvenience like load shedding is enough to push you completely to the point of breakdown.
Indeed, specifically when the hybrid model of teaching is being happening due to the COVID pandemic and lockdowns, where most of the courses are still happening not physically but remotely, and connectivity plays a huge role. No doubt the ESCOM issues is affecting everyone, businesses, education sector, exam time. It's very sensitive. And we really pray that our system goes back to normalcy, because with COVID and with these breakdowns, it affects hugely and impacts on the young person who's trying to compete in this very difficult scenario. But on the other side, I also wanted to re-emphasize that we in the higher education, post-school, and through your medium, we're trying to reach out to parents and to young people and trying to advocate a number called 0800-363636. It's a totally toll-free number. And this is any time in the day, any time in the night, 2 o'clock. If you are feeling a psychosocial distress, you have anxiety, you have an exam pressure, you have a family bereavement, you have an abuser, you have gender-based violence, which is possible, which is the reality of our South African society. This number gives you an access to a psychologist, a counselor, a social worker, 24 hours. You need to speak about this. This is a time for us to work as a society together. And this is totally toll-free. And this is mostly people are alone. You know, the challenge with mental health is stigma, less of knowledge and less spoken about. We don't speak about mental health when we're on dining tables or among our parents with their children. It's a stigmatized being like this. And this is an unspoken reality of a major pandemic affecting this country and the global world. So the reality is that this stigma does not let people know the risk factors, the symptoms, the early risk screening, the early symptom finding. And if we can continue through this education and getting the first years, the people entering the system to understand this, we might save many lives, which we are losing at this stage.
And you know, Prof, you would have missed it, but a lot of our viewers would have seen me a short time ago as I was listening to you on my phone. I'm reading a message actually that I've just received from a friend who said, listening to us speaking tonight, that one of the concerns about the return to campus and students having been away for so long is that many have gone to areas where psychosocial support is not available, whereas if they were on campus, there would be the counselors on duty, the intern psychologists and the like.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I'll still repeat the number. And this is to reach out to every young South African in a post-school education system. Whether you're in a TVET campus in Bizana, you are in a campus in Guguletu, in Alexandra, or you're in a university like UCT or a Walter Sisulu, anyone. Because we understand at this moment, and I do realize the difficulty. They don't even have study time. They are back in their families at times. They have pressures with their own families. And there are multiple challenges at the same time. And you are living your life alone. You can't even talk when situations like these happen. And such numbers and such things reaching at your access. And you don't have to pay for it. Just pick up the phone and call this number, 0800-363636. And this is predominantly the reason somebody has messaged you, Tembi, is the reason for putting such systems in place. And the aim is to save lives at this moment. And it is difficult. There is no doubt.
Prof, we can only hope things get better. That number again, as you said, 0800 363636. We'll also be sharing it with our viewers throughout the course of the weekend, hopefully. But for now, Professor, thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Professor Prof Ahluwalia, Chief Executive at Higher Health. We've got much more of the day's news for you when we return.